Yeah, for me, it was agency, right? So I'd come off, sure, like I was doing the startup thing before that, but at JP Morgan, when I was looking at stocks essentially, and we were talking about portfolio managers like trying to grind out a couple basis points of alpha. So like you can't impact the outcome, right? You're doing some research, you're trying to have this great idea, and then you're hoping that like your idea manifests and like the management team's doing what you think they should be doing or seeing the world how you think they should be seeing it. You have no agency. Even if you can talk to management, you're not influencing anything. And so that was really cool that, when you're in a operating company, especially a small one, I say this all the time, one person or a small group of people can have a really outsized impact on a small business. The catch is there's no guarantee that impact is positive.
All right. Welcome to The Intentional Owner. I am back with Sam, and we have a special guest today, Palmer Higgins. We're super excited to have you, Palmer. Thanks for joining. And we're going to grill you today. It's going to be just hot seat, just us asking question after question. And we're not going to ask at all about sort of how holding company structures work. We're just going to ask you about your life,
Right.
and maybe a little bit about holding companies. But I apologize if there's background noise because my cat is in the office with me today.
Talk about work-life balance. Kaustubh has this kid there with him.
I actually have two cats. I don't know if you even know this, but I have two cats. They both, normally I do this podcast from home. I do the work from home thing, but our ops manager is out, so I have to be at the office today. And so both my cats live at the office because I decided to just consolidate all my life chaos in one place, which is the office. But I got these two cats
at the office.
Yeah, they live here like on the weekends. It's like
that's really smart.
Yeah, I bought the like $800 litter robot. Like it's all automated. Look, you can see he just went up there onto the little ledge. That's where they hang out. And no, they're super happy here. The only problem is they're overweight. The vet is just trying to get me to lose weight, and I think the guys are feeding them. I think that's what's happening. Because I have them on a diet. But no, I'm at the office, so I'm here with a little bit of chaos. So Sam will drive the show today, I think.
I will drive, but I think it's important to know, why is today chaotic? What was today's day in the life of Kaustubh that's causing you to be on call for a fire drill?
Well, it's not even a fire drill, or yeah, I'm on call. That's right. Where our ops manager, she had something come up last minute, so she had to call out. And she told me over the weekend, which is really helpful. But just the basic blocking and tackling stuff that breaks. Now it's back to me. And I was telling Palmer during the pre-call that I did that for 2.5 years, and I haven't done it for the last sort of 6 to 9 months. And I forgot. It can be brutal. Like, it's just, you're immediately in the weeds of like, yesterday we had a call out and we had like a public notice for a tree job where there was a clerical error where the address doesn't have like the unit A on it. It just has the like home address. So the city rejected the public notice. And now we can't do the tree removal. We have to reschedule the whole job. And like we realized, obviously I realized that at 6:45 a.m. on Monday. And so it's just, that stuff I finally relinquished, but but there's still, you're always like one layer away from being back in it.
Yeah. So here's how I think about it. Your volume of content publication, mostly your writing, your newsletter, Sunthra stuff, like it is a proxy for how well your org dev planning is going.
Absolutely.
So you've had a lot of volume lately, which means it's been going well. So it looks like you're not going to be publishing
the ops
for a while.
Manager, our ops manager, she's been awesome. She's been with us now for about 9 months, and we've had a great working relationship. But if she's out, it's just I'm back up, which is less fun. You two both have a couple extra layers between you and the operations.
Oh, I think we're going to question that today.
I mean, yeah, not having layers is how I became a CEO in the first place. So
that's true.
We've lived that, all of us.
All right, Palmer, most people, I'm guessing, who listen to this know who you are because you're part of like, we'll call you like one of the OG trifecta.
Whoa. High praise.
Yeah. Well, I think it's earned. So can you give us like the minute download on what you and your brother and sister-in-law did and what you're building, and then we'll kind of poke?
Yeah, sure. I'll go super summary here. 10 years ago, a little bit more now. I'm going to have to start saying 11 years. Left jobs predominantly in Wall Street and finance related jobs, and decided to get into this thing that is now called ETA. At the time, it was just search and self-funded search, and we didn't actually know either existed. We just thought, hey, let's buy small businesses so we don't have to compete with private equity. We know what that is. We don't think we have an edge there. We know what VC is. We don't think we have an edge there. We don't have a cool startup idea. So let's buy these small businesses. Let's own them indefinitely. And we're going to buy multiple small businesses throughout the US. At the time, we were thinking US. We ended up expanding to Canada, and in myriad different industries. And that was the sort of initial genesis. And that has stayed a through line of Chenmark for the entire close to 11 years now. Obviously, we learned what search was pretty soon thereafter, got plugged into that universe. And I say this because I think it was really helpful that we had already pretty much committed to this path. And then we learned what search was, because what we were doing was at the time very antithetical to search. We were 3 people. We were related. We were going to buy multiple businesses. They weren't going to be a roll up. We were going to own them indefinitely. No, we weren't going to have LPs. And so we were not search. We were not private equity. We were this weird middle ground. But we were sort of already down the path. So we said, cool. A lot of people don't think this is going to work. It seems kind of crazy, but we're going to do it anyways. So that was 11 years ago ish. Flash forward to today, we have 14 different operating companies that are run independently from one another, from Maine down to Florida and into Western Canada, in industries like tourism, agriculture, landscaping, food manufacturing, component manufacturing, retail, all different kinds. Yeah, so that's the super, super tight summary.
So that's why you're the OG, by the way, because you were doing this before the ETA SMB industry even existed.
Certainly before the ETA moniker existed, and definitely before the Holdco moniker existed. I think that has sort of formed around us and others doing something similar. I think it's helpful because it lends some sort of like credibility to the style of investing, if you want to call it. I think we view ourselves more as operators than investors, but we buy businesses, so we are an investor as well. I think the downside is it's brought a lot of people into the idea of buying multiple businesses that I don't think have really given a lot of thought into how hard it is.
This episode is brought to you by the Kalmar Group, a recruitment firm that specializes in placing leaders in the SMB community. Most small business owners treat hiring like a side project. Post on a job board, text a few friends, and hope for the best. But when it comes to leadership roles, hope isn't a strategy. The truth is, your people are your most valuable asset, and building the right leadership team requires more than luck. It takes a proven process. That's where the Kalmar Group comes in. They help owners like you find exceptional leaders in operations, sales, finance, and marketing, from managers to the C-suite, so you can stop guessing and start growing. Whether you're running a long-standing business or just acquired one through ETA, change is constant. Key people leave, new opportunities arrive, and when they do, the Kalmar Group is there to help you hire with clarity, confidence, and speed. You hire an expert for legal, bookkeeping, taxes, etc., so why are you flying solo on recruiting and hiring? With clients across the country and a track record of results, Kalmar doesn't just fill roles, they raise the bar for how you hire. Led by founder Dylan Scroggins, a 15-year recruiting veteran, the Kalmar Group exists to help business owners stop settling for good enough and start hiring the kind of leaders who truly move the needle. To learn more, visit thekalmargroup.com or connect with Dylan directly. More details are in the show notes.
Was the setup originally you always knew you were going to try to buy more than one, or at the end you knew that from the start?
Yeah, and so the first one was a landscaping company in Portland. That's what brought us here. We were in Greenwich, Connecticut at the time. Hated it. We were gonna move wherever the acquisition was. So depending on when you caught us, it took us about 9 months to find the first one. Depending on when you caught us in that 9 months, we were like, we're going to Jacksonville. We're moving to Reno. We're moving to Cape Cod. Nope, we're moving to Portland. Reno would have been cool. We visited a tattoo equipment manufacturing company in Reno. I was like, this place is kind of cool. It's really close to Lake Tahoe. But it didn't work out. It was also pretty subscale, so I'm glad it didn't work out. Yeah, so that's what moved us up here, and then our second acquisition was actually in Canada, and so we sort of broke that seal pretty early.
Yeah. All right. So what Kaustubh and I like to do is go all the way back. So you guys are roughly how old? And let's just talk about you, Palmer. How old were you when you guys started? Who were you working
26.
for? 26. Who were you working for?
So I was the only one that had punched out of finance at that point. I worked at JP Morgan, buy-side equity research for a few years. Really loved my bosses, learned a good tool set of essentially like deep fundamental analysis, right? Being on the buy side meant I didn't have clients. I didn't have to create work product for them. I only had to create analysis for our internal use, which was great. And you live your life in Excel and Bloomberg essentially. And then like data warehouses where you can access data that costs just crazy amounts of money. So I was in pipelines and power plants, energy infrastructure and utilities. And I remember the huge theme of that, basically the whole 2 years that's when natural gas and fracking was really going nuts. The price of natural gas was dropping considerably, and it became more economical for power plants to burn natural gas and create electricity than coal. And so the whole phenomenon was called coal gas switching. And that sort of interfaced both worlds, pipelines and power plants, in terms of energy infrastructure and how you're going to move the BTUs of energy and how you're going to light them on fire to make electricity. I remember we got access to a data source that pulled daily data from every single power plant in the country, telling you exactly their productivity, how much electricity they were creating, and you could back into how much raw commodity they were using across the entire country. And so I built this like absolutely massive model to essentially like forecast coal demand decline and natural gas demand increase. But the data source was $100,000 a year, and
Oof.
they did not blink an eye at paying for that. I was like, this is wild. I'm 23 years old. And they're like, figure this out, Palmer. I'm like, okay. Anyway, I made what could have been a short story long, but really liked my two bosses. They were great. They invested in me. They cared about my development, which is not guaranteed when you're a junior analyst in finance in New York. But I knew pretty quickly that I didn't want their job. I didn't want their boss's job. There wasn't a track that I thought that I could be here for the next 30 years. And
why?
do
you remember why?
Yeah, there's basically two tracks. You could be at JP Morgan, you could be a head analyst. And so they really wanted people to be research analysts for their whole careers. And they developed a pipeline to make that happen and make sure that you could be highly compensated by doing that job well without having to become a portfolio manager and actually be the person buying and selling stocks. So that's pretty unique to JP Morgan. So that encouraged people to stay in research for their whole careers. So I worked for two of them. So that was one avenue, is you just stay in research and you become basically a master of 30 stocks in the S&P 500. They broke up the S&P 500 into 30 stock subsectors, and a head analyst was in charge of those 30 stocks. They were supposed to know absolutely everything there was to know about those companies, and then feed that information to our portfolio managers, who were then buying and selling stocks in their mutual funds that you could go buy in your personal account, your brokerage account. So then the other avenue was to become a portfolio manager. And they had a little bit more cachet, but they were pretty upfront that, if you're right 51% of the time and you're squeezing out 50 basis points of alpha, you are like absolutely killing it. And oh, by the way, you have to do that with the same 80% of information that's publicly available that every other analyst and every other big bank across the world and hedge fund and whatever has access to. And I just thought, like, there's no way I'm going to have an edge. I am not smart enough to figure out how to grind out some alpha with the same information that everyone has access to. My coal gas switching model could not have been better and was probably worse than everyone else's. I remember getting Goldman's, I remember getting Bank of America's and Merrill's, and they're all like 50 gigs basically. It's like, who's going to figure out if this is right or wrong? Like, certainly not me. So I had an opportunity to go, and also I hated New York City, couldn't stand it. So I really was not sad about leaving New York.
Where are you from?
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a suburb of New York, essentially. I grew up in North Jersey. But it's just,
At least you're not like the type of I don't want to offend people, but you're not the type of North
Oh
Jersey
boy,
that
this
says
is about
I'm
a
from
third
New
of our
York.
listeners,
Yeah,
Kaustubh. Here they go.
No, I definitely don't say I'm from New York. And honestly,
yeah.
I actually tell people I'm a poor New Jersey resident. So other than having a 973 area code on my phone, which I can't ditch now because of two-factor authentication, too much stuff is tied to my phone number.
Yeah.
Moving over to 207 area code is just like not going to happen. So other than that, and I do root for the Giants in football. That's pretty much it. But my dad worked internationally when we were kids. We grew up internationally a decent amount. I lived in Japan for basically the first 4 years of my life. And then I went to boarding school. So I actually only lived in New Jersey for 10 years, 4 to 14. But those are formative youth years. So that's why I say I grew up in Jersey. But now I've lived in other places more than I've lived in Jersey. So
it is interesting, the equity research point, because one of my internships in college was buy-side equity research at Putnam Investments in Boston. Very similar, mutual fund type investing. And I came away from, they gave you 3 stocks as an intern and you just, researched them and made a pitch. And I came away from that being like, man, I could spend 20 years doing this and I'm barely scratching what other people, it just seemed impossible to find the edge. So I feel like I came to that same conclusion. And my immediate reaction at the time was I have to go private side as opposed to public side. And so it is funny. I just did that several years after you, because when I was then on the private side doing distressed debt, we were looking at a bunch of post-reorg coal companies, right? Because they had all restructured.
All went bankrupt. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So I remember I was looking at like Alpha Naturals, like post-reorg equity that then split into Contura, like, because I'm just a few years younger than you.
Yeah.
So
well,
just
actually,
how those cycles.
It's funny. So having done all that, one of my brother's good friends was in restructuring. I remember him going through the wave of all those bankruptcies. And it's funny seeing the wave pass through.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was it was a weird, when I got placed in pipelines and power plants, everyone else in my analyst class was like, oof, Palmer's got the short straw. Like, that's not the sector that anyone wants to be in, those two sectors. And the guy that got like CPG and tech, they were all like, this is great. But probably 6 months in, everyone was super jealous of me because I had just really good bosses. And very quickly it became apparent, like, especially, I'm sure this is true in many places, but junior finance analyst in New York, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It matters who you're doing it for.
Good point.
And I just got super lucky. So Dave Macarone, Leslie Rich, shout out. They're probably not going to listen to this, but shout out to them. They were super great. Super great.
Who knows? Maybe they're looking to leave and buy their own small business.
Oh boy. All right, so Palmer, you punched out, and where did you go before you then ultimately
the hard
went to
opposite. So JP Morgan was 260,000 employees when I was there, and then I joined a startup. I was the number one hire. We hired 2 more people after me. So there's 4 of us. It was a digital textbook, it was a print textbook company on the foreign language side that was looking to transition into a digital textbook e-learning company. And so it was going to be brought on as like the first business guy to help do that. And they were basically going to ride the iBooks textbooks platform on the iPad. So at the time, technology and education was very much up for grabs. Apple seemed to be the early leader, and they were developing this architecture for a interactive digital textbook on the iPad. And it was called their iBooks textbooks platform. And so you had to essentially code an entire textbook on their platform, but then it was going to be native to that platform. And then the idea was they were going to turn it into a subscription service. And so it was going to be $12.99 a year. So instead of selling one textbook once for hundreds of dollars, you were going to sell a textbook every single year for $13. And it was going to be interactive, and it was going to be native, and it was going to be great. A couple of problems. One, there's huge publishers in education, and they were big, and they could spend a lot of money. And 2, Apple didn't really care about the publishers, certainly not the small ones on the platform, and they were using the iBooks textbook platform as essentially a loss leader to sell iPads into school districts. Most notably, they decided not to enforce a feature that would wipe the textbook from the iPad every single year, and instead put a reset button at the back of it. So you didn't actually need to pay $13 a year. You could just pay $13 once. And at the end of the year, when your tech department collected all the iPads, they could just hit the reset button and you'd have a fresh textbook. Not only that, if you published a update to that textbook, the newest update would automatically get pushed to all the laptops that were all the iPads that were deployed.
Oh no.
So what started as like, hey, there's a shot here. It's a low probability. If we can just ride Apple's coattails, turned into like, this isn't going to work. You can't sell a textbook for $13 one time. That was also at the time when Google was launching their notebook, their Chromebook, and getting into education in a big way. And they were taking a different approach where we're going to sell much cheaper hardware and we're going to go for mass adoption based on price. And so they wanted publishers on their platform too, but they're like, hey, look, give me the PDF of your print book and like, we'll just digitize it and that'll be good enough. Like, don't spend any development dollars. But we were pretty focused on Apple. I could see that wasn't going to work. And there was a divergence of opinion on that. So yeah, that was when it was time for me to leave.
This episode is brought to you by Aspen HR. Are you sick and tired of dealing with rising health insurance costs? Did you just acquire a business and discover the employee handbook hasn't been updated in 5 years? Do you think there is an opportunity to make your payroll process more efficient? Or are you tired of dealing with slow responses and payroll errors from your current vendor? If you want to professionalize your HR, benefits, and payroll function, reach out to Aspen HR. Run by a former searcher, Mark Sinatra, Aspen HR is the white glove PEO for search operators. Email sales@aspenhr.com today. And for our listeners, Mark will offer you a complimentary HR due diligence assessment. So it was time for you to leave. Had you already been bitten by the buy a business bug?
No, I'd say I was sort of disenfranchised with what I was doing and complaining about it to James and Trish.
Okay.
And I remember one time in particular, I was complaining to James and he was just tired of hearing me complain. So he's like, either raise some money and buy out the founder and do what you think needs to be done, or like leave. But I'm tired of hearing you bitch about this. And I already knew what the founder thought the business was worth, and it was not grounded in anything sensible. So it was time to move on. And at the time, I would probably say I was the most frustrated with where I was at in my career, but James and Trish weren't 100% fulfilled in what they were doing either. And so that's when sort of we naturally coalesced of, hey, we're all looking for something different. We're comfortable betting on ourselves. Is there something there?
And did they have the SMB idea?
It was sort of native. I had spent a lot of times at trade shows in that job and a lot of time just like literally sitting around in a booth. And a lot of people in booths are small business owners. And so I remember talking to like the OtterBox guy before the OtterBox guy was super big. And he was like on the path to getting big, and hearing his story and some of these other guys in their journey of small business entrepreneurship. And so that was one avenue. And then we sort of thought like, is there a world to acquire small businesses? And we're sort of like, I don't know. Like, and obviously we found Biz by Sell and thought, well, maybe they're for sale, but are they good businesses, or are they, priced attractively because they're not good businesses? And the sort of more we pulled in that thread, the more we realized like, no, there's something there. They're definitely small, and that means they're more volatile, and that means they're more risky. And that's probably where they're priced where they're at. And there's a supply demand mismatch. That's probably where they're priced where they're at too. So you can't just buy anything indiscriminately, but there's good businesses. They're just small. And it wasn't like we had this defining aha moment of this is it, we're going all in. It was, every day we got a little bit more convinced that this was something we wanted to do. And I think our opportunity cost was relatively low because we all wanted to do something different. And we were all young. We didn't have kids. I was at that point, I already moved in with James and Trish because I wanted to get out of my lease. So I had preserved maximum flexibility to leave my job. And so I ended up just staying.
Was it foregone at the time that the three of you would work together on the next thing?
No.
So what were alternatives that you were thinking about or they were thinking about?
Yeah, as a person, this is where we're getting personal podcast. So I'll give you, this is a fun personal story. People are definitely going to either appreciate this or troll me. One one option was the like,
Please,
well,
the latter.
if I don't know what to do, like I'll do what a lot of other people do and they don't know what to do. Go to business school.
Business school.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I started, that's the troll part. And so
I'll troll you live.
I started studying for the GMAT. And I remember like the programs like, hey, take a practice test, see where you're at, and then you see where you need to get to, and then you study to get to that point. So I took a practice test and I was like, I wouldn't say I'm a great standardized test taker. And I did surprisingly well. I was in the upper sixes. It's not like phenomenal to get into a top tier business school, but not terrible. I was like, oh, I'm a lot closer than I thought I'd be. Like, right, cold off the rip, no studying. And I started studying, and with each practice test I took, I got worse. And I remember I was visiting my folks. I took a practice test in the morning. It's over the summer, and I got worse again. And now I'm like objectively in like bad territory. Like I'm not going to get into business school at this point. And my parents had like a bin of like old tennis rackets in the garage. And so I just like grabbed one and I just wrapped it around a tree in their front yard. I needed to like expel some anger. And that's when I stopped studying for the GMAT. I'm like, I'm not doing this. Like my heart's not really in it. I'm doing this because I don't know what else to do. That's not a good reason. And what I'm doing here on the studying like isn't working. So that was the end of my GMAT experience.
You know what's crazy about that story though, Palmer, right? Is people have a really hard time knowing when to quit something. And I feel like I've seen folks that are unhappy in a career spot, they're unhappy in a role, and they go for 8 years, 10 years, 12 years before they're able to actually pull that trigger. I'm curious if that, like your ability to make the hard switch towards small business when it wasn't obviously a career path at the time. I don't know. It seems related to the fact that you're able to say, hey, this GMAT thing is just not working. I got to move on. As opposed to like, I know a lot of people from, who come from finance background who would just put their nose to the grindstone and keep grinding until they like willed it out of themselves.
I mean, that's a nice way to put it. Like the other way to put it is I just didn't have the grit to stay with it. So
I'm spinning it because I don't have much grit either. So
well, it depends. Like in some things I think I do have a lot of grit, right? It depends how much I care, right? I just didn't care a lot about the GMAT, and I didn't have a good reason for why I wanted to go to business school other than like it being a thing that people do and it was going to be socially acceptable. So that's probably a reason for it. I think having low, especially early on, like having low opportunity costs, like I left JP Morgan before the comp started to get like pretty big. And I remember I told them I was leaving before bonuses got paid out. And I knew because it was that was the first year where bonuses became uncapped. And I knew I was performing well. And I figured I just want to do the right thing. I felt like I'm pretty sure that means they couldn't change my bonus. And they did. In like the worst way, but fine. I walked out of there feeling confident I did the right thing. And then, opportunity cost being low just means you're open to a lot of opportunity.
Well, I think it helped too in hindsight. We all have the benefit of hindsight of like our own paths. You were young, you were 26. Yeah. So you didn't, I'm just guessing, like you didn't have a huge personal balance sheet to risk. You didn't have a wife and kid to support. So without the lack of opportunity cost, or with the lack of opportunity cost, you can switch quickly. It's the ability to do it. Was your dad an entrepreneur? Your mom an entrepreneur in any way that sort of taught you that path?
No, I mean, they would, if you ask my parents, they would tell you that I had that bug early on in the sense that like I did the lemonade stand thing. Yeah. I'd put a table. I remember I got into Beanie Babies as a kid and then realized like I didn't like Beanie Babies. I just liked them because my friends liked them. And so then I was selling them roadside to like hawk $1. So I did stuff like that as a kid, but I wasn't like making business plans and doing anything formal. Like I walked dogs and washed dishes when I was a kid. I strung tennis rackets when I learned how to do that. I played tennis a lot as a kid. So I stood up like a tennis racket stringing business, but it wasn't anything like crazy. I had financing support from my parents, right? So like stringing tennis rackets, I was playing enough tennis that I was busting a lot of strings myself. And so my dad was like, I'm just going to buy you a stringer you can string your own rackets, and then you can string other people's for money. Like, he never made me pay for the stringer, which he probably should have.
All
You
right,
don't need
so
to learn
then,
about CapEx quite yet.
all right, so then the idea, because I think it's really helpful for people to be thoughtful when they go to leave, to understand the trade-offs and what could make this path easier versus harder. I don't know if you guys saw it, but there's a mutual friend of ours that said something recently, like about an avatar. Lately he's seeing a lot, essentially the profile of people trying to get into ETA today, which is they're a little older, they have a spouse, they have a child or children, they're used to making maybe a few $100,000 a year in their job, and they're willing to risk it all to go buy something for 5.5 times EBITDA with 90% LTV. So it's like, you talk about the margin for error is skinny. Maybe that's one of the rules of thumb, is like, the sooner you can do this, the better.
I mean, it's clearly what I did. I've said this to you, Sam. Like, a lot of people told us what we were embarking on wasn't going to work, and so I'm very cautious to tell anyone that what they're doing isn't right or isn't going to work or they shouldn't do it. I'm sort of very strongly on the opposite end of, if you have conviction and clarity that this is what you want to do, have at it, and don't let anyone tell you that it's right or wrong. Get feedback, sure, but like, make your own decision.
Why did people tell you it wouldn't work? What was their reasoning at the time?
Because it was so different, right? We're going to buy multiple businesses in multiple industries. We weren't going to run them ourselves. So there are legitimate challenges to that. You got to solve the leadership problem. Who's going to run these businesses? How are you going to ensure that they don't go to hell? And now you not only have to be a good business operator and or hirer of business operators, but you have to be a good capital allocator too, because you're going to be buying other businesses. So I do understand that it's sort of like a compound bet on a bunch of people that are relatively young and inexperienced. Well, not relatively, very young and objectively inexperienced. So I get that part. But I think the simplicity of like, hey, that's not funded search or self-funded search, ergo it's not going to work, I think was a little bit too simplistic.
All right, so then you guys set out to search to buy your first, dirty word, holdco, when you have a portfolio of zero. So,
correct.
Like, what
we weren't
got
even
you
using that word internally.
Right.
We were like,
Yeah.
we're going to buy some businesses, and like, to buy multiple businesses, you have to start with buying one business.
But were you using the word Berkshire Hathaway?
I've always tried not to use that, and
Okay.
I've heard myself using it more and more, only because when I explain what we do and I get a bunch of blank stares, it's like, what's a way that I can just like streamline this more quickly? And so I'll start to use it as like an example, but I really try not to, because for me, it makes me feel like I'm comparing myself to Warren Buffett. It's like, I'm not. We haven't been in the game long enough. We haven't been nearly as successful. Yes, we've borrowed some principles from Berkshire Hathaway and sort of how we've set up and established Chenmark, but I'm personally pretty wary of trying to say like, oh, we're the Berkshire Hathaway of small business.
But it's
Despite
probably the easiest
objectively,
way
like,
to
it's not wrong. I'd say like we're probably the most close to the Berkshire Hathaway of small business.
it's the easiest comp to explain what you do to people that really just want to like hear 3 words and move on to the next
Correct.
part of the conversation. Yeah.
For a very long time, my wife called she was my girlfriend then, but she said what I did was just money things. I'd explain to her and she's like, I'm in healthcare. It sounds complicated. You do money things. I'm like, well, when I was in New York, I did money things. Like, this is like objectively like not really. She's like, it's still kind of the same to me.
So, like, as a comparison, I quit my job as a big law lawyer in 2016. And I think it wasn't until like 2021 that, and already bought in businesses, operating, that I started describing my job as something other than being a lawyer. Because for like 5 years there, when somebody asked what I did, I was either thinking about doing a searching, had bought in something and was running it and getting crushed in every way. So it was just easier when somebody asked what I do, just to say I was a lawyer still.
Yeah.
So we could move on, because everybody knows when you say you're a lawyer, well, let's change the subject as quickly as possible.
I did the same when I was running mainly grass. I just tell people I worked in lawn care. Didn't say what I did. It was just easier. Some people assumed I was a lawn care technician in the field every day. Other people assumed I cut grass. You know, it's just like easier.
All right. So go back to you are searching, or you decided to search, you were going out there chasing opportunities. What is it you actually got excited about to do this other than the potential to generate some wealth for yourself? I think everybody knows that's there. Everybody kind of does it for that reason. But what else was it that attracted you to this path?
Yeah, for me, it was agency, right? So I'd come off, sure, like I was doing the startup thing before that, but at JP Morgan, when I was looking at stocks essentially, and we were talking about portfolio managers like trying to grind out a couple basis points of alpha. So like you can't impact the outcome, right? You're doing some research, you're trying to have this great idea, and then you're hoping that like your idea manifests and like the management team's doing what you think they should be doing or seeing the world how you think they should be seeing it. But you have no agency. Even if you can talk to management, you're not influencing anything. And so that was really cool that, when you're in a operating company, especially a small one, I say this all the time, one person or a small group of people can have a really outsized impact on a small business. The catch is there's no guarantee that impact is positive.
Yeah. Totally.
Like you will rock the boat at a minimum.
Yeah. So like, the agency cuts both ways, right? You make a good decision, you can really impact the business positively. You make a bad decision, you can really negatively impact the business.
Yeah. You own those decisions every day. Okay. But then so you go buy that first landscaping business. Maybe two things. Like when you were searching, what was your role in your trifecta, your triumvirate of your family, the Higgins family doing this? What was your role?
We were
and then
all
you bought
searching.
you were all searching.
Yeah.
You then closed. What was your role?
Yeah. Still really searching because we weren't running that business. And that also floored people, which I totally get. They're like, so you bought this business, you're not running it yourself. Nope. So we were still searching, and then we were, working with we bought it from two brothers who stayed on to run it, and working with them on how can we take this business to the next level. Didn't go great, but like that's what we were trying to do.
What was your pitch to the brothers at the time? Why did they? I feel like every searcher runs into this problem of like, we would love for the seller to stay, but why would they?
Yeah. So they saw opportunity to grow, I'll say like super regionally, knew that they didn't have the bandwidth to do it, didn't have the capital to do it. Looking back, I think what they really thought of was just a roll up where you don't do a lot of integration and you slap it together and you sell it off to a private equity company before the wheels fall off. That's not really what we had articulated to them, or really what necessarily they articulated to us either. But like in hindsight, I think that's really what they really wanted. And they knew that if in order for the business to scale, they knew they had to institutionalize the business. And this was the classic, I'm looking to take some chips off the table, but we're young, they were in their 40s. So, we got room to run. We see a lot of opportunity and we'd like some help to do that. So that was going into it, that was the hope. The reality was, and I think it's probably what other people run into is, once you have millions of dollars wired into their accounts, it's just different, right? They're not 100% equity owners, even if they own some equity, and you think that should magically align incentives. They don't value the equity the same way you do. So your incentives aren't actually aligned perfectly. And then, they're wondering at some point in the future, why am I working just as hard as I was pre-sale as I am now, but I don't own 100% of it.
And so in that moment, after you closed, they were running it for a while. And then at some point you dropped in, right? And in between, had you guys closed any acquisitions or add-ons or anything like that?
Yeah. So our second acquisition was a food manufacturing company in Western Canada. They make bread and buns that they sell into grocery stores. So it's totally separate. Bought it from an owner, number two in the business, stepped up to run it. And that went great. Honestly, it went super, super well. Definitely got lucky there in some sense that he was totally capable of stepping up into that role. The owner was very reasonable on valuation expectations and was very motivated to get out of the business for some personal reasons. As that went super smooth, and then things went pretty well demand was sort of start steadily increasing. And that's a business with some pretty high operating leverage when you have more case volume going through the plant. So that went pretty well. We bought another landscaping business about an hour-ish south of our first one, the seacoast of New Hampshire. Similar situation. Number 2 in the business stepped up to take over the CEO role. That also went well. At Seabreeze, though, so that was the one in Portland. At some point, the brothers said, this is what we want to do. And we're burnt out, we're fried out, we're leaving. And we actually didn't step in to run that business. We hired someone directly into that role, did a recruiting process, thought we were pretty deliberate about that. Bottom line, didn't make the right hire. And we took like a challenging time and we made it worse.
That is like by far one of the toughest things, right? I feel like every searcher I talk to is like, why don't you just hire a GM and put them in?
It sounds so simple when you just say that.
Right.
Sounds so simple.
Do you have a reflection? I mean, you've now, since you guys have done, various methods of bringing operators into your businesses. I'm curious if you look back to that first attempt at an operator hire, is there a glaring like, oh, duh, we shouldn't have done it for this reason?
I think it's just really hard to interview for that kind of a role, right? Like you're only talking to that person. You can do as many interviews as you like, but like you're both dating, right? They want you to like them. You want them to like you. Especially for a new acquisition, your certainty of close is not 100%. So like they're interviewing for a job that they don't even know exists. So it's just very challenging. I think we could do better now. I think we know more what we're looking for and what right looks like for us. But Kaustubh, you said like we've experimented a lot of different ways, but we really have experimented with one, which is bringing people in to work with us ahead of them becoming CEOs.
Right.
And it's a development, CEO development program, but it's also like a dry run, making sure that we hired who we thought we hired, and them making sure that they joined the company they thought they joined. And so there's sort of a mutual fit assessment that goes on as part of that program. That I think has been, super beneficial, and I have to credit James for concocting it.
But before you did that, like as a formal program, your GVP program, that's when you and at least your sister-in-law had to get in and run a business, right?
Yep.
So can you talk, maybe not like so much what forced you into it, because that's more maybe like the whims of the opportunities that came across your plate, and maybe like what was the day in the life of operating? What were the things that caused you to like and dislike it? And then maybe like talk about going back to HQ now and, departing that role.
Yeah. So I think it is probably helpful to describe how we found ourselves in those roles. So hiring people directly into COC, we didn't do that just once. We did that multiple times and it didn't work each of those times. Similarly, we tried buying businesses from owners who were going to stay on to run their business and didn't work each of those times. So, when you fail multiple times, you got to try something else. And so me stepping in to run a business was that we had hired someone directly into a CEO role at the time of closing. And pretty quickly, we realized he was not a good fit. Earnings were declining, morale was plummeting. It was sort of like the all-you-can-eat of like not great stuff going on, and it became clear we needed to make a change. And it was just us at the time, and so we had a meeting of like, one of us is going to have to step in to run this company, and decided it was going to be me. And a week later, I was introducing myself to the team at Manly Grass, basically saying, hey, I had a hand in hiring this person and he was clearly not the right fit for this role and for this team. And I'm sorry. And I'm here to try and fix it. And I'm going to be here as long as it takes.
How old were you? Say 2 years later after you started?
Yeah, I was probably 29, just turning 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that your first true management experience?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went from nothing to, at the time, it was probably a 60, 70 person company.
And how did you, Trish and James, how did you land on, all right, Palmer, you're the guy?
I think they probably had more confidence in me.
Short straw for the
did.
Second time.
At the time, I was in charge of search. And so that was objectively the easiest thing to turn off, right? So who's got a job that they can wind down fast? And it's like, at any given time, the odds are the deals you're looking at aren't going to go amount to anything. Right. So just stop signing NDAs and see the process of, deals you have in flight through, and then you're kind of done. And so that was the biggest part of like, you can do this more easily. And I think they had sort of more faith that I could do a good job, or they could have just been saying that to sort of pump my tires.
Were you excited in the moment?
I remember being, like hindsight, like I should have kept a diary, because then you could like objectively see your real self. I really should have. But I remember it was an incredible forcing function. The things weren't going well, and I knew it was going to be a bit of a turnaround scenario, and I knew I had no experience in lawn care, no experience running a business. So it was a very clarifying experience from a like, there's no choice. And so I don't remember fretting about it too much, because like I knew that wasn't going to do me any good. I just remember gearing up mentally for a pretty intense period of time, which came. But fortunately, team there, the bones of the team there were really good, and there were some key things that the old CEO was doing that I thought were pretty bad and pretty harmful to the company, that if we could just do things a little bit differently, we could stop the stuff that was hurting us most aggressively. And luckily, a lot of those inclinations from the outside looking in proved to be true. And so the rebound happened a lot faster than I expected it would take.
So you just described it as intense, and I would say, I don't know, 9.5 out of 10 searcher CEOs managing small companies for the first time would describe it the same way. Why was it intense? Like your memory of that period of time.
Yeah. So you have a company that's not performing well. So you need to stem the bleeding quickly at a time when morale is at its low point too. So I need to ingratiate myself with a team where I have really no leg to stand on, right? I had a hand in hiring the person that caused the morale issues in the first place, and I had no agronomy or turf management experience to try and tell them that like I was going to help them in that avenue. So you're trying to show the team that you give a shit. So you're working really hard to show them that, because the only thing you can do to show them you give a shit is to try hard. Be the first one in, be the last one out. So at a minimum, they know that you care. And then you got to learn, and everyone's looking to you to make decisions. So you got to get up the learning curve really, really fast to make decisions that are going to be the right ones and hopefully impactful. And so it was just a very intense period of time. But like you said, Sam, no different than any single one of our CEOs. They go through this program. They've worked in an operating company for a CEO who's probably been through this program too. And so they're close to the action. But the first, call it 3 months, 100 days, whatever it is, universally, people will say like it's the most intense work experience that I've ever been a part of.
I'm curious, did you, at this time, were you married, or you were still, but with the same person though?
Now I'm, at that point, I was with my now wife.
Right. And did she know what was coming?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was pretty upfront with her when we started dating that, hey, I'm doing this thing. It's a little bit unique. And it requires me to work a lot. And I need you to know that. And so for the first many years that we dated, I worked, if not 6 days a week. And that was the norm. And what I did on the weekends was, I'd sleep in a bit, but I'd work sort of like 9 to 5 on the weekends. And then we'd go, I have the afternoon. So at 5 o'clock, I'd punch out and we'd go do something, grab dinner, go hang out with friends. And then sort of same thing, work out, maybe go to brunch on Sunday, and then work the rest of the day and, punch out at 5 or something like that. And that was pretty much my routine for a lot of time.
And so when you went into the business, that your lifestyle routine didn't actually change that much from her perspective.
No, the only thing that really changed, I was traveling a lot more. So the locations were scattered throughout Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. So I was on the road a bunch, but, and I definitely was, that the first 100 days, that was the most intense work period I've ever had. Up early, up late, still doing the weekend thing. But like, I knew it was unsustainable. She knew it was unsustainable. And it was, but I needed to do it anyways.
And anybody who's listening to this that hasn't bought a business yet, for as intense as that period sounds, and like Kaustubh,
Sorry.
can't you get your animals together?
I'm gonna move this cat.
God,
Just from the top. I saw him tipping from the top box. I was like, that's not gonna end well.
and we were in the heat of the drama, and your cat just ruined it.
No, the cat was sensing, his timing to make a comedic moment.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing you did as far as the communication with your spouse was probably not to have your lifestyle change really have a degradation in those early days. I have seen people when they realize what they're in for in the first 6 months of their business ownership, and it's fundamentally different than what they were doing before. They had like a 9 to 5. They could separate from their cell phone. They didn't have to work weekends. They weren't on call. Like that just fundamentally changes that first 6 months. The fact that you didn't have a shift, so to speak, probably helped, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
the intensity definitely ratcheted up. Like pre
Yeah.
that, working on the weekends, I'd go take my laptop to like a cafe and I just like crank
Yeah.
through Sims there. And like
Yeah.
for me, that felt like a weekend day because I wasn't in the office and like I wasn't holding myself as accountable to like I got to get through this sim in this time so I can move on to the next thing. Or
Yep.
I'd go to. I remember I'd take my laptop with me to the beach if a bunch of friends were going to the beach. And I just sit there, on my laptop. And I remember being really nervous about that. Like, my friends, like, are they going to think this is like super weird? And they were great. It's like he works a lot. That is kind of weird, but like at least he's here. And like when he's done, he's going to close the laptop and he'll be here. But it's like in order for
Yeah.
me to even entertain going to the beach, like I got to bring my laptop.
And at the time,
Yeah.
did you what was your pitch on the vision, right? Like you said, it was unsustainable. Like I assume at the time with your now wife, you were talking about, hey, like this is where this becomes sustainable down the road, or how are you guys talking about it?
Yeah. I don't think I was that explicit about like, here's where the end is. I was just like, hey, this is gonna, and I knew it was gonna be intense. I didn't know how intense it was gonna be. And she was great. She understood. We were both pretty young. She was busy training to be a nurse practitioner. So she like got it. Particularly after like, we started dating after her like most intense year in school where she was basically working all the time. If she wasn't in class, she was studying. So she got what like an intense stretch looked like, and I didn't know how long it was going to be. It ended up being about 3 months. I got pneumonia, and I like couldn't even like walk upstairs, and that's when my wife, then my girlfriend, she's like, I think this is the moment. Like this is probably like your body telling you that you can't keep this pace up. And it's like, yeah, that's fair. On the plus side, drugs for pneumonia work incredibly well. I went from feeling super bad to feeling like pretty normal in like 12 hours.
I will
I'm
say
glad that's your recollection.
this is definitely a toxic thought I have as well. Is like when I get sick at now running the business, it's kind of a great reprieve. It's just I actually just have to take some time off. I lie in bed, I watch some Netflix. I kind of love it when I fall sick sometimes now.
I mean, it's fair.
Yeah.
A little sick. But like to go back to it, like, yeah, it was intense. It's not sustainable for sure. But like, I needed people to believe me when I said I gave a shit. And like,
Yeah.
I didn't know any other way. Still don't really know any other way other than to ratchet up the discipline and the intensity to show people that like, he might not have all the answers. He might not know anything about turf management. He might know anything about this industry, but like he gives a shit. And like first impressions do matter. They really do. And I only had one opportunity to set a
Yeah.
first impression in this backdrop of a general negative impression of me and Chenmark because, these guys bought this business and installed this person and it's not going well and we're all pissed off. And I'm stepping into that. And so I needed something to sort of like break that.
Okay, so I'm guessing when you went into like starting Chenmark, which probably didn't have a name at the time, just going out to buy a small business, ratcheting up your work intensity was not a part of like the mission. So like I'm curious now, not maybe not now, but after you got out of that first stretch of intensity, like is part of what makes this career path sustainable, like the hours you put in, maybe your role now back away from the day-to-day running a single business, And what is it that creates sustainability? Because Kaustubh and I talk about this all the time. You can like, we kind of have a lot, him and I have a lot of pride in how hard we can sprint for a long time, but you can't do that forever. And sooner or later, it starts to make you wonder why you went down this road. And then you have a wife, and then you have kids, and you're like, holy cow, the cost of working 70 hours is way higher now than it ever has been.
Yeah, I could honestly probably be a lot more intentional about all of that. I've generally been uh, somewhat reactive to what is necessary at the moment. And when it's not necessary to sprint, I'm pretty good at taking that slack and opportunity to dial down. And when it is necessary to sprint, I know that like this is what is called to me. And, you're ramping back up, whether it's, working nights or weekends or whatever. Um, so like little small example, I still have a rule. It happens very infrequently, but if I use my inbox as like a to-do list for the most part, including sort of longer term stuff. I'm sending myself emails on like projects and stuff. And if I get to inbox 0 and I get to-do list 0, um, I'll just walk out of the office. And it doesn't happen very frequently. But I know if I do that, like honestly, if I do that probably within 90 minutes, I'm not going to be at inbox 0. So, but it's just one of those things like, if the world gives you some slack every now and again, like I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
Because I know like at some point it's going to snap back the other way and I'm going to have to meet that too.
I am curious though, then I totally get the urgency when you had to go into that business, right? Like this is high intensity moment, you got to just plug for 3 months or however long. In your more Chenmark activities, what feels that intense? Or what feels like it has that urgency?
Yeah. I mean, candidly, like I'm not running a business now. And I say like, I don't have that same intensity because I don't have the weight of a company on my shoulders and the weight of a whole team on my shoulders. I work with a group of our CEOs and I talk to them regularly and try and, help out where I can, give them sort of my thoughts or, maybe some pattern recognition that I have that I've developed over 10 years. Anyway, I'd say it's like sort of like an active board member, but we just don't have boards. And I'm always on call for them if they need me. But they're not my decisions to make. If they ask me what I would do in their shoes, I'll tell them, but they all know that those aren't my decisions to make. They're the CEO. They're in charge of everything. They don't approve anything from Chenmark. They don't submit, they're not sending anything to Chenmark for central processing. They are deciding 100% of what's going on in that business. And so that is just a huge distinction. So I have a tremendous respect for the operator.
When what does your work week look like right now?
Yeah. I work out in the mornings now because I have a kid. So I have a kid.
Okay.
She's a year old. So I work out in the mornings, do drop off at daycare, work out in the morning, get into the office. And a lot of my day during the workday is meetings. So it's meeting with CEOs, it's meeting with business owners or people in the industry. I do some other stuff around some of the Chenmark, I'll call them like benefits or services. So 401k, property and casualty insurance, and healthcare. We're not centralized, but so we're utilizing sort of the scale of Chenmark to try and leave the guaranteed cost fully insured world and be self-funded. So that requires a little bit of coordination. So like right in the moment, we just changed brokers, for example, on our healthcare plan. And so I'm working really closely with our new broker to try and get them up to speed and get them the data they need and sort of get them sort of up to where we are. And like, let's try and evaluate alternative, healthcare structures that can help drive down costs while increasing care. Right. So a lot of time is spent on healthcare right now and a lot of meetings. And then that'll switch because, we're doing an evaluation of 401k. So I'm starting to ramp that up. And so it's sort of depending on like the theme that I'm working on, that might sort of suck up more of my time. But then I go home and I get time with my wife and daughter to do sort of dinner and bath time and bedtime. And I'd say at that point, that's sort of a line of demarcation of like, if I have a lot going on, then I'll plug back in and that's sort of my flex time. And if I don't, then I'm hanging out with my wife until we go to bed pretty early. And then, we're waking up and doing it all over again.
And honestly, that routine sounds kind of familiar for, a parent of young kids. I think the we talk, Kaustubh and I, a lot about like fitting work and life together fairly well. And my guess, I don't know what your JP Morgan life would have been like. I can tell you what my big law life would have looked like. And there was no like melding
No.
personal and work together. There was no such thing as like, okay, you cannot come in till 10:30 because that's when you're going to do the morning routine and gym and that's your free time. Like there's not flexibility like that. So
Yep.
I think that's what
Yeah, so
makes
a
this
good
path good.
example, I schedule a lot of calls in the afternoon, generally too. So like if I have a video call, I'll do that at 4, and then I'll schedule a phone call at like 3 or 3:30, and I'll take the phone call in my car driving home, and then I'll take the video call in my office at my house. So then I can roll out of that. Generally at 5 is when my daughter has dinner, and so like if I can roll out of that and be slightly late to my daughter's dinner, I'll do that. So that's an example of like the kind of flexibility or blending that I have. Honestly, if I was running a business when I was running mainly gas, there's no chance I would have done that, right? Because no one else would have had that opportunity. Certainly none of the techs or none of the branch managers who have to be there for production, have to be there when the last tech comes out. I would never have done that. And so I don't know what I would have done with a kid.
Yeah.
I would have figured something out, and maybe I would have cut myself a little slack to, work from home in the afternoons or whatever, here or there, but it probably wouldn't have been an everyday thing.
So like right now in your sort of stack of recurring activities or priorities or what have you, what sort of energy draining the most? Like what would be the next thing you want to get off your plate?
401k.
Okay.
And I've successfully offloaded a lot of the real brutal audit related work to Sarah, who has very graciously taken it on. But it's just a slog. So we're trying to find that's one where we have centralized. We have one 401k plan. And it's sort of been beat into us by ERISA attorneys. And like shared ownership means shared 401k plan is what you have to do. And because you're over 100 participating employers, you need an audit. But doing an audit of one 401k plan that is itself comprised of 12 US companies, each of whom run their own payroll on their own payroll system with their own payroll frequency, is just a slog. And so we're trying to sort of figure out if there's a better way to do that. That's definitely, I'd say both her and I would say the 401k is like not energy producing.
And in terms of you've selected like, hey, right now healthcare is our focus, right? For this, I don't know, for this month or this quarter or whatever. Like, do you go through a quarterly rocks type of planning for yourself or for a team, or how are you doing your prioritization on, hey, like I've got this energy draining thing, we just got to get it done this month?
Yeah. To be honest, like I've never really been great with goal setting. So I wouldn't take any advice from me on that. Even when I was running a company, I always operated better on what I called themes, because I always felt with goals, like they're supposed to be smart. And so you're trying to be really specific, and then you get into it. And the more longer term oriented they are, the less specific I found that I was capable of being that far in advance. And so I'd get into it and be like, well, this doesn't make any sense anymore. Like the game's changed, or like I've got some more new information, and like this isn't going to work the way I thought it was, or this isn't what I really think we should be doing. And so instead, I felt like I operated better with themes, where it's like, hey, here's like 3 themes that I know we need to be pushing the ball forward, but like the tactics or the methods that we're going to be used to actually accomplish those themes are probably going to evolve as we do it. So I'll give you an example. Like one of the themes when I was at Mainly Grass was essentially operating leverage, but like really in the sense of technician efficiency. So you have the scarce resource of technician that takes like 6 weeks to train up. You have a very seasonal business, 7 months to do this work. If you miss a window to do the work, it's gone. You got to move on to the next thing. And so you really have the scarce resources like the technician production hour. How do you maximize the value of that technician production hour? Well, that theme has a lot of components to it. Pricing is a component, right? So you can just price your services higher. And so like what is the optimal level to price work at different lawn sizes for different services? You have an efficiency challenge. So route density is a huge factor in lawn care, because a 15,000 square foot lawn 5 minutes from your shop is priced the same as a 15,000 square foot lawn 2 hours from your shop. Doesn't have to be now with technology, but by and large, people do. So how do you sort of manufacture density? Because that's going to radically increase your effective earnings per hour. And then what you really care about is you don't really care about revenue per hour. You care about gross profit per hour. So what are your unit economics of your programs and services, and how do you flex those? And so I was working on that theme for 4 years. And that was one theme. And so some of it was pricing. We did a huge pricing change after my first year. Some of it was unit economics, changed our entire program design and changed up the products we used considerably. My last year, as I was bouncing out of Mainly Grass and handing the keys to Edward, I had made a very radical program change. Said, hey, this is going to happen on your watch, but like I've already made the call.
Good luck.
Yeah, it ended up working out great. But yeah, so that's an example of like that theme was very consistent of like, I know there's a lot of meat on the bone here, but how exactly I'm going to tackle that, I'm going to sort of chip away at it in different ways. And the timing of that is going to be dependent on sort of what I feel like our capabilities are as a team. And are we ready for this kind of change, or is our customer base ready for what we want to do here? And so I found that allowed me some more flexibility. And I felt like if I had any strength at all, one of those strengths was figuring out like what was the most important thing to be working on and what was worth time invested versus not.
Pivoting to a little bit more of like the why now, I'm going to assume when you started on that first business, you had a PG. And I'm going to assume when you first started, you didn't have like, enough wealth or savings to not have to work. And now I'm guessing you've got some more financial independence. Let's put it that way. Has that changed your perspective on the job of building Chenmark? And if you had to say like the why you get up now and still work hard, because I know you do, like how has the why changed?
Yeah. Certainly had PGs for a long time. Only recently stopped having PGs. And I always thought it was pretty funny because after that, for the first million was going to wipe us all out.
Yep.
And so after that first million, it made the banks feel so comfortable. And I remember thinking like, why? And it wasn't until we now have a bank syndicate that James has really spearheaded. So we're in a much different playing field now. And the lead bank in that syndicate is KeyBank. And I remember meeting with the head guy, and we were talking through the whole thing and talking about the PG. And he's just like, I don't mean to be mean or anything, but like, the PG doesn't mean anything. Like, I hear you, man. Like, I've been waiting for someone to figure this out. But for the longest time, it gave everyone like the warm and fuzzies, but like it wasn't as good as the piece of paper is written on. Like, yeah. Anyway, that's a side story. I'd say, to be honest, I haven't really been. I think there's definitely a component of like, hey, I want to be successful and I want to do well financially. That's going to provide opportunity and options for me and my family for sure. I'm not gonna pretend like, but it wasn't like I was waking up every day with that being the thing that was like written on the sticky on the mirror, and I was reminding myself of that all the time. And honestly, like a number on a piece of paper doesn't really feel all that different either, So it's not a ton different. My why, I would have highlighted sort of agency as like a big why. And I'd say like retrospect, a comfort of betting on ourselves, all three of us. And certainly in retrospect or in hindsight, a really high level of comfort with delayed gratification. Certainly building Chenmark the way we did it, to now be able to say we're 100% internally financed. We don't have to raise capital to go do deals. The shareholders of Chenmark are employees of Chenmark. That is great to be able to tell people, and it's easy to show people how you're different than private equity or how you're different than other potential buyers. But it took us 10 years to get to that point to tell people that they're like, yeah, we're there. But I'd say like, especially having run a business, that why has expanded to playing a role, however small or big, hopefully bigger every day, in helping other people find success professionally that then bleeds into their personal life. And I'd say more so than just the GVPs. Very cool to see these people come in who want to run a business, who want to do it as part of Chenmark, and earn the opportunity to be a CEO of a business at Chenmark and really find a passion for it, really find fulfillment, really find traction. That's awesome. I see it in the CEOs I work with. It's great. But the reality is they're all phenomenal people and they would have had options elsewhere. What I find even more impactful is that hourly worker who starts with you, who finds a company that actually gives a shit about them and engages with them and motivates them and invests in them and develops them to a point where they've developed in their career or their profession beyond where they thought they could have, and their life's changed because of it. I find that very motivational and very purposeful.
I'm curious. I mean, I completely agree. I haven't gotten to the destination of financially independent, but I feel that part of the why growing more and more every day. But given you have to delegate operations of each business, right, to an operator, I feel like one of Chenmark's sort of hallmarks is you guys seem to be very disciplined capital allocators and just really good financial managers. How are you sort of balancing that type of vision and mission that you sort of outlined with, you have to manage these operators to numbers, to P&Ls, to balance sheets? How do you kind of weigh those two when you're talking to your team?
Yeah, so I don't manage our CEOs. The ones that I work with, I don't manage them to numbers. One of them didn't even have a budget for the first 6 months of this year, and I wasn't hounding him for the budget. And he's probably going to listen to this, and he's going to know who I'm talking about, and he's going to be like, "Nah, I'm sorry, Palmer." Yeah, so like I'm not telling them, "Hey, you're not hitting your numbers." Like they're motivated to do it, and we're in it to be here for a long time. So I'm not really worried about hitting like today's numbers today. The economy's in a different spot this year. I think a lot of people are experiencing softness.
Yeah.
Our companies are too. And I'm not going to beat them up that like what you were thinking in October isn't necessarily manifesting today. As long as you're doing the things that are going to be good for building this business long term, you're treating your customers right. You're treating your employees right. You're not sacrificing performance today and mortgaging performance tomorrow, or you're not sort of emphasizing performance today by sacrificing performance tomorrow. So I actually think that I don't know this because I'm not in other organizations, but I don't think we put a lot of external pressure on our CEOs, and that allows them to go slower in the beginning when they're new CEOs in new industries running a business for the first time, and allows them to go faster when they found their legs. As you like, how long did it take you, Kaustubh, to feel like you were really confident in your role?
Not yet. I don't know. No, I think
No, that's not true. 2.5 years?
I think 2.5 years. Yeah.
Right. So do you think you would have been a better CEO if you had someone telling you had to hit certain numbers every quarter in the first year?
No, absolutely not. Right. I mean, the best
So why
feedback.
should I?
Yeah, the best feedback I got from one of my investors, Nick, was I'd much rather you grow 10% a year for 5+ years and not burn out than grow 25% for 2 years and burn out.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think the burnout thing, by the way, is probably for a lot of us that go into this for the agency reason and that independence reason. There's the sharp edge of that whatever sword that is, you can take it to an extreme and then burn out. I mean, I think I've been there. It sounds like we've all kind of been there. So,
yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, Palmer, did
Having
this
a truly
adjust
long
for
time
you?
horizon really helps.
Yeah. Okay, that's true. Yeah, I was gonna ask, did this adjust along the journey? Because you're 10, 11 years in. At some point, did you make a mental shift of like, hey, being long-term oriented is a management practice that we want to practice?
No, I think it honestly comes pretty naturally to all of us. And look, like especially for a GVP program, we're hiring people who are pretty ambitious, right? Like if we're hiring them, our hiring percentage is like some crazy low number. Like we're hiring pretty ambitious people. So I don't think my job is to beat on them to become more ambitious. It's to maybe give them some context of the world of small business that they're just getting exposed to, give them some pattern recognition, listen, be a sounding board, be a resource. I think that's what I can do to be helpful. And that's, similar to why we don't underwrite really aggressively either. I can't imagine being super aggressive in underwriting so I can stretch to win a deal at 7, 8 times EBITDA. And some of the businesses we own, the industries they're in, companies are trading for even higher valuations than that. And so to justify those valuations, you're going to have to assume so much stuff. And the second you put it into your deal model to underwrite a higher enterprise value, it ceases to become an opportunity and now it becomes an expectation. Then you're putting a new CEO in a position with very high expectations right off the rip. And I just don't understand how that's a win-win. So it goes back to like, I'd rather give ourselves CEOs space to go slow, to go fast later.
I love it. I mean, I'd kind of like to know, I know that the answer is probably more of the same, but from the outside looking in, you guys are in your late 30s. You've been in this for a dozen years. You've built something truly unique and special. And like, do you guys have a plan? And I know you just said you operate without goals in a sense. Like, what are you guys building towards? Because in some ways it looks like you've arrived, you've made it. So now do you optimize for lifestyle and quality of life? Same thing. What do you optimize for now?
I mean, so like the short answer, and honestly, you get different answers depending on who you talk to. So I am probably the most extreme sort of incrementalist thinker of like, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the sort of super end state. I don't find it super clarifying or motivating for me. So I don't find it a great use of time. And I just focus on, how do we make sure the companies we own now are doing as well as they can? And that's going to give us the opportunity to bring in the next company. And let's make sure that is handled as best as we can. And that'll give us the opportunity to do the next one. Right. And yes, at some point we'll get to a scale where Chenmark will probably have to change a little bit in order to handle not just 14 businesses, but 40 or 100 businesses. Who knows? But I personally don't spend a lot of time trying to solve those problems today because they're not problems that we're facing right now, nor are they sort of like, we're not on the precipice of those issues or sort of that challenge. So I know it's not a sort of palatable answer, but I do know we're bringing people in with the promise of developing them to be CEOs. So to sort of dial back completely and say, we're not going to do that, I think would be an unmet promise to the great people that we're bringing in. And we're bringing in stellar people. I think by and large, what people enjoy about coming to Chenmark is working with a group of people that they really admire and get along with, and the camaraderie that develops, even though sort of you're walking your own path and you're running your own business, there's 13 other people who are walking a similar path that have a lot of the same experiences while not being exactly the same experience. And that's a pretty special thing.
Yeah. And I think the way that I've thought about it, and Kaustubh and I talked about it, is like you create something that like you no longer need to be growing out of or scaling out of. It's now like a really good blend of agency, potential for financial independence, and balance. And now like you don't have to think about it as a sprint anymore. Now we can kind of live a more sustainable life. I mean, sometimes it doesn't feel like that, right? One of your businesses goes to shit and you're going to have to dive back in, but that's just part of the job. That's the cost of the upside of having all this agency.
Yeah. And I got to credit, certainly Trish writes weekly thoughts. And so a long time ago, she wrote a post on, it's not necessarily work-life balance, it's work-life blending. How do you integrate work into your life so it doesn't feel like this huge trade-off, right? And I think that's sort of over the 10, 11 years, that's become like a natural thing, like traveling with my laptop. And my wife knows, like, I'm actually more present on vacations if you give me an hour in the morning that I can just like rip through my inbox. Otherwise, I go on vacation, I come back, and I got like 1,000 emails, and I'm feeling like I'm behind. I've missed something. I'm the bottleneck on something, and now I'm more stressed. So that's how I do it. Like other people would tell you that's the worst thing to do in the world. Like, don't open your computer when you're on vacation. That's fine. That's great. Like for me, that's what works. And so I think I've sort of found sort of what works over time. And obviously now with a kid, that's changed slightly. Certainly on the sleep side. But that's what coffee's for. So
no, that's what the second kid is for.
Dude, too early. Too early.
I hear you. That was awesome, Palmer. Thanks for opening up a bit, man.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for having me. Glad I got the call up.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
by the way, we have a little bit of a competition thing going here, Kaustubh and I. So you're welcome to stay for this, but this is where it might get heated. You're also welcome to drop.
What is it?
Kaustubh and I have had a prioritization issue. You mentioned exercise every morning, and we didn't understand what you meant.
Mm.
So we have an activity competition going on where we track, like, we assign points by physical activities that we do daily and weekly, and we're doing like a competition where we track weekly, and then we have a summer score, and loser has to fly to winner's city. And I forgot who's paying for the golf, but that's how it's supposed to work.
The loser's both flying and paying for the golf. It's a big loss.
Got it.
Yeah. And
It is a big
we
loss.
agreed that the golf has to be at least $200 per player per round.
Oof.
And we agreed that if I have to tell my wife I have to fly to Seattle to buy him golf, she's gonna kill me. So I just have to win.
It is.
So what are you doing? You're trading your like workouts for the week?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Here,
so
I'll
shall
share
we
my
share
screen. I have
Kaustubh?
it. I have it up.
Okay,
Just
go ahead, because this time change shit that we have going on, where he is on the West Coast, gives him 3 more hours to like come over the top.
So
on
this
Sunday
is
nights,
this is
and
last week's that just ended on Sunday that I won by 2 points. So you get a point for each active day. Sam always gets his 10,000 steps. I've been doing a lot of Peloton, so that's the cardio. And then these are all the ways we try to juice them. It's just like do the third, like do abs, do push-ups, whatever. This is where you kind of like win the incremental points.
Some
so
of these are
what
25
I have a
push-ups?
problem with.
That's
Go
like
ahead.
1-2 sets. You can do that every day.
Well, that's what my girlfriend
You
says
say
to
that.
us too. Well, let me open up. By the way, here I'll open up all the columns.
10,000 steps is hard.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. That's the one you do every day, and you don't do 25 push-ups.
So look at this, Palmer. In the first 2 weeks, these were test weeks. We started counting for real at the beginning of May. Like the total points we were getting were like 5 each for the week. And my girlfriend Anna looked at this and she was like, "I don't get it. Like, why aren't you just doing them all?" And I was like, "That's the problem."
That is. But like 10,000 steps in a day is worth 1 point, and 25 push-ups in a day is worth 1 point.
Yeah, I mean,
We hear you.
Yeah,
We hear you.
Okay.
I think we went through this period where we were adjusting points. Like, we did it a few different ways. We assigned multiple points for like an activity, where some are worth just 1. Now we have a point system where you have to win by 3 in order to get 2 points, and 5 to get. Is that how we're doing?
no. If you win by 5, you get 2 points for the week, and if you win by 10, you get 3 points for the week.
Got it. So it kind of neuters the misnumbering that we have going on a bit.
It's sort of like match play more.
I love how you have a bucket of balls as a point.
And despite the fact that we both play a lot of golf, I think I got Sam, you've done 1 bucket of balls, and I've done 2 buckets of balls all summer. That's not great.
No.
Don't you have like a golf trip coming up? I feel like I've seen that on LinkedIn or something.
Yeah, that's in November.
Yeah, okay. So that's not going to save
It's
you
not
for a
gonna-
while.
No. So
Also,
far.
you'll like this. Scoot over a little to the right where you can see my score from 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, this one.
Do you see him?
Vacation, LOL.
I was actually
Hey.
proud of you for doing 18 points that week, because it meant like you didn't go for, the minimum necessary to take 3 points off me.
Except then the next week, I thought you were still on vacation, but you just didn't put your points in until the end of the week. So I went low that week, and then you beat me unexpectedly.
And to be clear, so I have like an automated system. You can click down below, like where it's pulling formulas from.
Yeah.
And so Kaustubh has the benefit of seeing my point tallies live, which means he is always going to have like.
Well, I do mine live too.
Advantage.
I do mine live. I just have a 3-hour time advantage.
Yeah, the Sunday record keeping has been a little stinky lately.
It's because I'm working out on Sundays, Sam. I did a 45-minute bike ride yesterday.
So last Sunday, I was down by 1 point at like 10 o'clock Eastern on Sunday night. So I dropped down, did some push-ups. I was respectful. I only went for 1 point in order to tie you to not play games. And what did Kaustubh do while I slept?
Another 30 minutes of cardio.
Wow.
Well, where
So-
I feel like there's no expectation that we're not playing dirty. I don't know.
I mean, I just think it's wild what you guys choose to do. Like, you do 30 minutes of cardio instead of 50 air squats.
Nope. My go-to now has been the efficiency standard. So I go for the push-ups, the crunches, the air squats, and the burpees because I can knock those out in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then usually I get the activity day, which all you have to do is one activity and you get the activity day. And the 10,000 steps, like you can just take 2 phone calls on walks and you're going to be there. So
See, you got the system.
I'm doing it the
You got the
hard way
system.
for sure. I'm doing like the Peloton like 3 to 4 times a week. That's
That's
to be
good.
clear,
Yeah.
like the thing that's not working is we're not losing enough weight.
Yeah, exactly.
How's the diet though?
Well, so here's the problem. I don't know if you're feeling the same, but like now that
We're
I'm
all in our late 30s,
Yeah.
the diet impacts our fitness a lot more than the workouts do.
I feel like we're
Good
working out so much more. Like I'm hungrier too. Like I'm
Yeah.
actually eating
Yeah.
more. So I don't know. Like we have to like not only eat more but also eat healthier. That like
Yeah.
just like how much can you do?
So there we are. Thank you for listening to our
I love it. I love it. I might do 25
Intentional
push-ups today just in solidarity.
25.
I did
25.
Yes, please. For the 1 point.
Got
yes.
You can donate. He's gonna donate that point to me. That's
I don't think so.
it. No, I'll tell you what. I'll do 50 air squats and 25 push-ups, and I'll donate 1 point each. For you guys.
perfect.
Thank you.
Well,
That was fun, Palmer. That'll be a good one.
Cool. Thanks for having me, guys.
thanks, Bomber.